Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. I'm going to start with the questions and start, Ms. Mayor. In your opening statement, you described the significant investments that Yahoo made under your leadership with respect to its internal security. Nevertheless, despite these investments, the company apparently failed to detect the 2013 breach, which was the largest breach in the history of the Internet, for more than 3 years. And even after the 2013 breach became apparent, Yahoo significantly underestimated the number of accounts implicated by billions. And so I'll give you an opportunity to answer the obvious question, but that is, with such a strong security team in place, how did Yahoo fail to recognize that all 3 billion of its user accounts had been compromised, and why did it take more than 3 years to discover and to disclose the breach?
At Yahoo, we deeply valued our users' security and invested heavily in that security. As is frequently the case in these types of cyber attacks, they are complex, they are persistent, and in often cases, the understanding of the facts evolves over time. To this day, we, as I understand it, still have not been able to identify the intrusion that led to that theft, which is to say we have received files from law enforcement that contained Yahoo data. We verified that it came from Yahoo. We don't exactly understand how the act was perpetrated. And that certainly led to some of the areas where we had gaps in information.
Why the delay in disclosing it? I mean, it took from 2013 3 years to, and why? How was it possible to underestimate by billions, literally, the number of consumers who were impacted by it?
Yahoo did not know of the intrusion in 2013. We learned of the intrusion by files that were presented to us in November of 2016. And in a very short period of time, we verified that that data was taken from Yahoo, that it was most likely from August of 2013, notified law enforcement, notified our users, and took protective actions on all the accounts. And at that time, we estimated that it affected more than 1 billion users. There have been recent announcements from Verizon that I'm not privy to since I'm no longer with the company.
So the 500 million that was originally disclosed, and then it jumped up to 3 billion, there's no real explanation, at least to your knowledge, for how you miscalculated the number of people impacted?
The 500 million number was related to the fall 2014 breach by the Russian hackers, where the indictments were issued by the DOJ and FBI.
Mr. Smith, in prior testimony before Congress, you said that the failure to patch a known vulnerability in your system basically boiled down to a single employee's failure to act, compounded by an IT scan that should have detected that failure but didn't. Then, to add insult to injury, the vulnerability was allowed to persist for several months without corrective action being taken. So, for a company that holds some of the most sensitive personal information on millions of American consumers, I hope you can understand why this revelation is so hard to understand. Can you explain why there weren't more tripwires or redundancies built into your system to prevent something like this from happening? You've also testified that these weaknesses have now been addressed, and perhaps you could also elaborate on how.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you're right. In prior testimonies, I referred to the fact that we were notified by U.S. CERT in March of this year, March 8th of this year, communicated per our protocol on the 9th to patch the vulnerability in the Struts software, open source software that existed. That email did go out per our protocol. On the 15th of March, we then scanned, and the scanner did not find the vulnerability. So we had a human error, as I described in the past, as well as a technology error. Both led to the ability for the criminals to access what we call our web portal dispute environment.
But why wouldn't you have had more redundancies built into your system? Why was it just basically comes down to one employee? That seems really hard to fathom.
Yeah, clarification.
A company that specializes in what you do.
Yeah, the redundancy was the scanner, and the scanner did not work as well. So you had the human process of which is standard process of identifying a patch, the vulnerability, applying the patch, and then going back a week later with a technology scanner to see if the patch was applied.
And can you said you've fixed that, or you can elaborate a little bit on that? Maybe Mr. Barros as well could elaborate on any further steps that Equifax has taken since the breach.
I'll start, and Mr. Barros can continue, if you will. What we had installed shortly after, about the time of one of my last hearings, was a new scanning technology. We upgraded a scanning technology to a new generation scanner that is seems to be a better scanner than the prior scanner. There's some process changes, Paul, you may want to talk about as well.
Sure. As you can imagine, this has been my top priority, strengthening security systems in our company. We have done a comprehensive top-down review of the process with the help of PwC and Mandiant, and we are strengthening all aspects of our operations, including our patching capabilities, enhancing and updating our tools to make sure that we have a effective detection system in place. We have actually put stronger policies in place, to make sure that we have more redundancy and closed loops, in order to make sure that our actions will be executive with accuracy.
Have you disposed of the data that you no longer need? Has Equifax disposed of?
This is part of the process that we're going through right now. We're evaluating the data architecture that we have to have in place.
How about encrypted
We're adding whatever is necessary to do it, including encryption, including tokenization, including all new technologies available to make sure that we protect the data. Okay. In both, in the data itself and the architecture that the data is going to be displaced.
Okay, thank you. Senator Nelson.